watching a lot of other channels and they all seem to start with a big epic guitar solo. So that's just a little bit of an improvisation. And now I'm going to give a homily, a little speech about something that I spotted in the land of gear. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a copy of this piece of kit, which is the new Blackstar interface, because I'm not regarded as an influencer. So if you're watching this, please subscribe so I can get some stuff to actually have in person and not have to buy it all the time. But people that I love and trust, particularly Jamie Humphreys, whose channel is linked below, have reviewed it and have deigned this thing good. And I also think that it's probably an amazing piece of kit, but it's still not serving some of the needs that the digital guitarist really, really needs to get to. And this is what I want to talk about today. There's a famous video that does the rounds on social media of Steve Jobs talking about the iPhone, and he's describing how he made it become a web browser, an iPod, excuse me, and all of those things in one box, and everybody was excited. And we in Guitar Land have had that for years. And here's my much loved Fender Tonemaster Pro, and it's basically got everything you need. It's an audio interface, it's a pedal controller, and it's a big, huge CPU brain that's able to crunch stuff. And it sounds absolutely amazing. It's a great unit, and I love it to pieces. But I don't gig with that. And the reason why I don't gig with that is I got it for me to have at home. And also that I don't really like having, €1,600 worth of gear at my foot at a gig. I'm going to go play a festival tonight. Now, I'm sure it'd be fine, but the last festival I played, and I live in a very rainy country, the front of the stage was nearly underwater. And I described my live rigs elsewhere, and you can see that I use a MIDI controller. Now, if that thing gets wet and dies, it's, €200 or €300. That's not, the same as losing a Fender Tonemaster Pro to the elements. Stage environments can be challenging, and having expensive gear at your foot, it's not always a good thing. And it's also one of the reasons why I use the computer on stage, because the computer just lives miles away somewhere else, and everything is wireless. It's wireless to the foot controller. There's some XLR cables to power the monitors, but generally there's no electricity or anything expensive in front of me on stage, and that's fine. The most expensive thing is me and the guitar and the wig. The wig costs an awful lot of money. But they're generally, able to deal with the elements better than something like a Tonemaster Pro or a Helix or a Quad Cortex. So what's this got to do with the Blackstar interface? Well, there is no proper live interface for a guitarist that would gig like me. And I think that there's a broader issue here. I think that guitar manufacturers, when they talk to or guitar gear manufacturers, when they talk to their marketing departments, the marketing departments know the guitarists like things with pedals and things that look like they were made in the 70s. And that's fine, but time is moving on, and professional guitarists aren't as necessarily tied to those sort of things. Now, I'm going to introduce the other piece of gear that I have with me today, which is an iPad. Now, this one, it's an Air from 3 years ago. It's very nippy. Now, I've done a video recently where I'm running lots of effects, Eventide plugins, a couple of instances of ToneX. This thing is not very powerful, and it's able to gobble up a lot of the plugins sort of requirements and run very well. Now, the thing about it is I don't yet trust it to gig, and the reason why is that it's using lots of different plugins. And what I like to do when I gig is I run main stage with Amplitude in it, and Amplitude loads up all the effects and the ToneX models, and it's simple and it's concise. So the first thing that I want to say, and I'll bring this back to the Blackstar in a moment, is that I'd love for that platform to live on an iPad, because that's an older iPad, but the newer iPads, they're using M1 processors. I mean, the first Mac that I went to gig on stage with was using an i7 from 2018. It's, really, really old. And iPads are just really, really capable. So IK Multimedia, if you're watching this, it'd be great if you can just bring Amplitude 5 in the same way that it's on the computer onto the iPad, because it means that I would have a lighter payload and other people might actually look into this as a rig. But the other thing that got me about the Blackstar is it's not the first interface that has that wonderful sort of JFET preamp in the input. There's a whole range of stuff that IK Multimedia have been making in this sort of universe of guitar interfaces, and I'm a real big fan, because unlike a lot of the multi-effects manufacturers, the input on this does have a JFET preamp, which I really think does make a difference, particularly if you're the type of guitarist that uses a lot of picking articulations to get a lot of dynamic sounds out of your virtual amp, and also if you use the volume knob, and you can really feel the difference with those. I think it also sounds better too. And also as part of that, they have the Z-tone control, which changes the input impedance. Now, rightly or wrongly, the instrument input on most interfaces is set at 1 meg, and not every sort of amp sim works like that anymore, where they're expecting that level of impedance to come through, because they're very realistic. Things like ToneX and the neural amp stuff and all that, they do respond to when you change the impedance. And for people that use pedals, when you put a pedal after your guitar and then into an amp, a virtual amp or a real amp, there's an impedance relationship between the two of those that is not always going to be 1 mega ohm, and it's nice to be able to control that. So what do I want? One sad thing about this Fender Tone Master problem, we all know this is true, is that eventually the Helix and the Quad Cortex will be outmoded and replaced by another thing that is similarly made of lots of stuff that will be, sent to a recycle bin, hopefully eventually, or just a regular bin, or just will rot away in a second-hand store. I don't think that needs to be. I think that there's still room in the world for having a modular approach to these things. And what I mean by that is, if we had interfaces that could do what the ins and outs on a unit like this can do, if we had an interface that allowed for easy connection to a MIDI controller wirelessly, then we'd probably have that interface till we're finished our careers. And that's a lot less e-waste and stuff like that. And it means that we're bringing our own CPU. So it means that if technology on the software side gets better, we can just change out this as we go and upgrade. I don't see it getting a whole lot better, to be honest, but if it does, then at least then we can match that. And we're not married to the limitations of the unit. One of the biggest complaints you hear about the Helix is, I ran out of DSP. I ran out of DSP. If you run Helix on a computer that's sufficiently powered, you'll never run out of DSP unless you're doing something absolutely insanely crazy. In fact, our singer was sick recently, and we had to change the keys for the guy that was standing in for him for the band for a lot of the songs. And I was able to run Helix Native as a pitch shifter just to change keys for certain songs, as well as my usual rig. Whereas if I was just using a Helix pedal, that pitch shifter block would have just creased the rest of my chain, and I would have to make some difficult choices as to what effects I could use. So marketing departments and guitar gear manufacturers, loving the new Black Star interface, love all the stuff that IK Multimedia have made over the years, but let's have a look at making an interface for live use. So what does that mean? Bus powered would be nice. When you're going on stage, having very proprietary adapters or anything like that is kind of a no-go, because that's the weakest link in your chain. If that adapter goes and it can't be readily replaced, then your whole rig would have to be reimagined or rebuilt with other gear. Bus powered USB-C, it's everywhere now. Let's have it powered by USB-C, and if the computer can't deliver the power, just stick another socket on the back so we can run it off our phone charger or whatever it is. The second thing is another one that's kind of interesting, and I'm just thinking about my own selfish payload. So when I go to the gig, I have a flight case with a Mac Mini in it and my XIO interface, and it's heavy. And I also have to bring a DI box. Now, I don't have to bring it. I could also just use what's in the venue, but I find that it's always just safer to have your own. So when I'm playing a festival where there's a short changeover, I build up my rig at the side of the stage, and I just take the 2 lines and it's ready to go. And I'm not waiting on someone to supply me something, just the lines. And that works to get me comfortable, because I don't want to be setting things up and then suddenly just going on and performing. I need to chill out a bit first and think about my life choices. So if we could have an audio interface that actually has XLR outs, oh my God, wow. What a life changer that would be. And not just XLR outs, but XLR outs that can deal with phantom power. So in other words, if they don't need phantom power, that they're able to discharge the current, because some sound men will send it out of habit. That would be such a big difference. The second thing is, if we could have it with always have separate outs. So in other words, what I mean by that is, if you look at most of the interfaces that are now geared for guitars, with the exception of the XIO, there's always 2 outs, because it's designed for someone that's working at home and they'll have 2 monitors and that's it. But when you're on stage, the joy of being able to have a digital rig is having the XLRs to give the sound man his thing, but also having a pair of outputs so that you can run your own monitoring, whether it's an F4 or one of those lovely Fender F4 things or whatever it is. Because you should be able to turn up your volume on stage or turn it down without affecting the mix out front. And if there's only one set of outputs, then you'll only be able to affect everything at once, or be relying on somebody else. And, that's one of the big advantages of actually having a real guitar amp, is you can turn yourself up and down. But the problem with a real guitar amp as well is that if you turn yourself up and down, you'll affect what the sound man is doing and become very unpopular with him, and probably not have a good sound at the gig. So having separate outs is a huge digital advantage. The multi-effects units have it. A live interface should also have it. The next thing that I'd love to see in a live interface, I suppose, is probably a form factor that makes it easy to transport. Now, I don't have the Black Star because I'm not an influencer to subscribe, But I do have this, and this is sort of typical of the Black Star sort of format. And if you imagine, you know, this is not something that'll go into a rack, or, you know, it's not something that packs easy. You know, it's designed just to live on your desk at home, which is fine. But in a live environment, it would be nice to have something that's shaped like an Axe-IO, that has all the controls at the front. It's something that just makes things a little easier to work with, because it can go into some sort of case or bag that's kind of a standard fit, because it's a half rack unit. These are the type of things I'd like to see happening. It's great to see that people are developing interfaces that are aimed at guitarists. It shows that the whole idea of using plugins is not so much of a faux pas anymore, and that people might now want to take the sounds that they developed at home and take them onto the stage. Having something that is portable, has professional ins and outs, you know, like the Axe-IO does, but maybe with the XLRs added in, having bus power, it would just make things so much easier. And on the software side, if we can get some of that wonderful, powerful stuff that we have in our computers onto a portable device, such as the iPads, like one of the newer ones, then, you know, these sort of things, the Fender ToneX Pro, they become less and less important, you know, and less as a sort of a thing that people need to be changing every 5 years if they have the wealth to do so. And it just means that there's less waste, we have lighter rigs, and we have more sustainable sort of ways of doing gigging. Black Star, great. Thank you for doing that. It's great. It's a great sort of support for, you know, this idea of using plugins on guitar. But please, God, somebody make us a live interface. Let's not be using these things anymore if we can on stage. Let's just try and have an option to be able to use our iPads and, you know, use things in a professional way. And I'm sure keyboard players will buy them too, because keyboard players have been gigging with computers for a long time. And having just XLR outs, wow, what a boon that would be. Anyway, that's today's rant over. I'm going to go and prepare for my gig, do a bit of practice. God knows I need it. And please subscribe and stick around for more nonsense rants like this. Take care, folks.